Luo, Kikuyu, Kalenjin. With these three tribes, there's a lot of antagonism depending on who's on which side. The highest percentage of votes, for example, that the Somalis have given in one direction since after Moi actually went to Raila Odinga in 2022. Yeah. But by then, Joho had not even become Sultan. Like he was popular on the ground, but he wasn't anyone compared to what Balala was. But guess what? Despite that, people still did not vote in that direction. Yakina Balala.
Yeah. They never go to an individual. They never go to... Yes, they will have their manifesto because they have to paint a national picture. Yes, they will promise that they have to do this. But then when the politics and what they hear, like right now, Gachagua anafanya nini? Tuseme ukweli, hata mimi nimse like guess what? Like I'm happy with what's happening. I want a whole organized opposition. But you know what I also want? I want every tribe ishikane ivote as a block, alafu ishikane kwa opposition zitoe Ruto zote pamoja. Because if they don't do that, they're not gonna win. They have to, like, Waluyo wavote pamoja, Wakikuyu wavote pamoja, Wakamba nini, washikane, watoe Ruto. Otherwise, haitoki. And that's the only way it's going out.
Okay, let me bring in a different school of thought, like as far as tribal politics is concerned. And these are some of the things that I say that sometimes get me in trouble. There's I think 40-something different tribes in Kenya. There's the five largest tribes, with the exception of the Luya. And the Luya is debatable because Luya is a conglomeration of different tribes, but for political reasons, the colonial government, lumped them together. And I would say to a certain extent also the Kalenjin, they were lumped together. But the Luya especially, because I know those different groups, the Maragolis, the Wanyores, the Bukusus, some of those languages are entirely different. Like they're not even legible. Hawaskizani.
No, tunasikizana.
But
well, sound to the same.
Well, from what some people have told me, wamenembe hizi languages ni tofauti kabisa.
Tunaelewana.
Okay.
Kuongele like kuna vile tunaita vitu differently, but tunaelewana fiti sana.
Okay, fair enough. So I what I was gonna say, with exception of the Luyas, all these other big four tribes, let me start with the big three that are the most antagonistic when it comes to politics. Luo, Kikuyu, Kalenjin. With these three tribes, there's a lot of antagonism depending on who's on which side. So the Kambas have also been very consistent in the direction in which they vote. But when we look at the Kamba and the Luhya, those two groups are not as antagonistic when it comes to voting. Easy tatu ndo the big three, the
no vodka block.
No, not only voting as a block, that's where you hear violence, that's where you hear a lot of vitriol sometimes. It's usually dominated within those three big groups. So out of those top 5 groups, kuna of course makabila nyingine tofauti. If you look at the patterns of how, like for example, we have data based on counties and based on constituencies in how people vote. Personally, I define a tribal block, and it may be defined differently, as a county maybe that votes 70%, over 70% consistently in one direction. We know some even go 80%, some even go sometimes close up to 90%. Now that is, we can comfortably say, mathematically speaking, not morally, socially or what, but mathematically speaking. So I think if you go outside to other counties, you see a very different pattern. And I'm saying this because I know at a personal level, there's not, like emotional attachment. Like typically in these other smaller groups that we come from, there's no emotional attachment to, we uko huku ama uko huku. And that's the reason, and it also reflects in how people vote. This is where you go in these counties, you see 60-40 divide. You see, like some cases even 50-50. So I think when we talk about tribal, there's the big tribes that that have been voting in a particular direction for the last many years, and there's an assumption that generally speaking, a Kenyan thinks first tribe when they're looking at, for example, at a presidential candidate. But from data, it shows there are so many other counties in Kenya that do not necessarily, and this is based on data, not based on, like what Ali feels or what Ali said. So we already have, a huge chunk of Kenya that doesn't necessarily think in that direction. So whether it's because they don't have their person, running for presidency, or I can't tell. But the data shows there's a very huge chunk of Kenyans who do not think in that direction.
Can I
Yes.
paint another picture from what you just said?
Yes, go ahead.
That could be true, but I think even in those areas of Kenya, once they have Mtuwetu in government, right? So if they have a representative from the area, it doesn't even have to be actually this person unites the entire area.
Yeah.
But because that area doesn't get as much publicity or political kuonekana sana political. Yeah, thank you. I'm looking at political airtime.
Yeah.
So when they have one person from that area with a spotlight on them, they do coalesce behind the person.
Do you have an example?
Yes.
Yeah.
Anybody from Somaliland, anybody from the coast area. Like
So let's talk about Somaliland. Let's talk about Somaliland.
Wait, let me finish. Or Maasai.
Yeah.
Right? They might not have someone, but if they get somebody who has a spotlight on them and that person is decent, I also need to say that person is decent, they actually do kind of quality. So what if that person tells them, this person is good for our area, they are probably going to vote that way.
So
I'm not saying it might not be really trouble. It's more like they have their own kingpin.
So let's talk data.
So
let's talk data.
Disconnect yako and disconnect your kweli.
So let's talk data. Let's talk data. The highest percentage of votes, for example, that the Somalis have given in one direction since after Moi actually went to Raila Odinga in 2022.
All right, no problem.
So that's the highest. And you know what number it was? You know what percentage it was?
No.
It was only 70%. And that is the highest they've
Question,
ever given.
was someone in Raila's camp from there?
So that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
There was always someone in Raila's camp, even before they gave Raila that 70%.
Okay.
That was the only time. And that's the reason why I'm saying, if you just carefully go look at data,
where
data, I'm talking about votes, votes that went to
You can
Raila
go to
and votes that went to
IEBC.
Ruto. Yeah. And you go to 2017, see how they voted. They've always, I don't know they strategically, but they've tended to divide their vote. And to me, anywhere where there's a 60-40, 65-35, it means there's a significant part of the population that is not going with that tribal narrative. And this is the case in very many parts of Kenya. If you look at that data. So when you look at that consistency of who's voting 80% in one direction, there's an overrepresentation of the big five, with exception, of course, of the Luhya.
I think what I meant by that, I said it doesn't have to be the person who represents the entire tribe.
Yeah.
It's like they come, because Kenya is divided in tribes, right? Like, where, if I say Somali, we know where Somali is. When you say Garissa, you know where Garissa is. When you say Coast, you know where Coast is, right? So I think what I meant is, from those regions, all of them might not be of the same tribe, But if they get someone from their region who was a spotlight,
So
they
what
might,
usually happens
they
is
probably,
this.
they do vote that direction.
So what
so
usually happens is this. What usually happens is this.
yeah.
So, and this is why I say that these things are tribal. It's because, let's say, let's talk Somali, right? Somali, it goes into us, even Somali Luyas, Kisis, it gets down into a subdivision. In Luyas, it becomes into sub-tribes. In Somali, into clans. In Kisi, into clans. No, no.
Okay, maybe that's a fair assessment.
So, so once again, once it breaks down into that, then it goes back, it breaks down into back to the list kwa village nani vile, even in a controlling vile mna vote, unaona. So what happens is you look, you have a leader, right? Somebody who I know Ali represents this area. So maybe I'm running for presidency. He'll come and speak to Ali, right? Ali comes from a certain clan. That clan has a vast majority of people, has a vast majority control of people, right? So nikiongea na Ali, niambia Ali, wewe ukiongea na wazee kwenu watakusikia, alienda mbele za kizo wazee, right? Akienda ongea na wazee wana control maneno huko chini. Hiyo ni voting block imekuja through Ali.
That's what I meant.
So what will happen is that, so that's why you usually find after elections imeisha, and ndio nilikuwa nafanya rigi na mjamaa akigombana, because rigi alimwambia nilikupatia kura mingi na need 50-50 na wewe, but huyu jamaa kama kama coalitions zingine. For every coalition you make,
so I think
you have to reward somebody.
I think whether there's a misunderstanding, hata tukienda kwa hiyo clan level, and I'll give an example. You see, for example, in the 2013 election, Najib Balala was a principal, you know, like with TNA, with Jubilee. He was a principal with Jubilee, but by then Joho had not even become sultan. You know, like he was popular on the ground, but he wasn't anyone compared to what Balala was. But guess what? Despite that, people still did not vote in that direction. Yakina Balala. Now,
who did they vote towards?
They voted towards Raila. They voted towards Raila.
Who was in Raila's camp?
There was no Joho at that time. Joho at that time was nothing compared. He was unknown.
But
no.
Yeah.
It doesn't have.
And I'll give you another example. I want you guys to listen for the sake of understanding, not for the sake of responding. Ngoja basi nimalize, bado janielewa. What I'm trying to say, I take for example, like I look at different families, you know, because we're talking about clan. I'm looking at families. Forget about clans. A family is a smaller unit than a family is a smaller unit than a clan. So you look at families, you go to this family, unakuta hii family, kuna mtu his side na his side. And that's fairly consistent. Unakuta kuna mtu yuko his side na his side. So there's not, you know, like that emotional attachment ati clan yetu, tunapigia mtu fulani kura. Because even within families, unaona kuna mtu, you know, like yuko, you know, at the height, you know, like of when, you know, like I was, you know, pro DM na nini, there was someone within our family, you know, like an uncle of mine alikuwa katika kampi ya Balala, and that is that's a very common thing that you see. Then that's why I'm trying to say, you know, like I think Kenyans need to stop assuming that ni makabila zote wakifikiria siasa wanafikiria in terms of tribe, in terms of clan, in terms of sub-tribe.
No.
In terms of
yes. I think you're misunderstanding us. I think you're misunderstanding us.
Hapa kwa conversation.
Yeah.
Again, turudi kwa nuances, right? Right? And each tribe will have its own nuance. But at the end of the day, there's still tribalism that affects how we vote. At the end of the day, once how the math is done in tribes. The greater math is done in tribes. It is a math that is considered that if you get kura za Murima, upate kura za Wakalenjin, upate kura za Waluya, upate kura za Mombasa, umeshinda na kitu. Unaona? So there's still that connotation of kuna votes, and that is why you see we have some politicians who on the surface wanakanga not so appealing, but hawatawahi kuwa dropped because of how they can mobilize people. Hiyo kwenda kupiga debe kwa ground, kuleta watu pamoja wapige kura pamoja, hiyo ndo power yao. Na watu they become an asset in your team. Like kama huu dem ameingia Linda Mwananchi leo, Aisha Jumwa. He's a very uncouth person. But mazole dem anajua kutafuta kura. Unaona? Like she's an asset and then she's not an asset. Like aesthetically pleasing, but kwa ground anajua kufanya kazi. Basically, yes, people will take care of their day to day.
Okay.
But also people will take care of their own person.
Okay, Ruth.
That's just the reality of Kenya.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely the tribal piece, especially on the bigger groups, right? The bigger tribes, right?
And that's what I was trying to.
But I think what at least what I'm trying to explain is when we go beyond those major groups, then it becomes about who can mobilize a particular section of Kenya, right? So it might not be all tribal, but if people on the ground will listen to Njoho, then Njoho becomes the kingpin for that area. It doesn't even have to be. I need you to like move it from tribal to like he can get people out to vote his direction, right? Then he becomes an asset. You move to whatever area of Kenya. If they know that if we talk to Ali can get us 60%. We don't need the entire 70, 80, 90. We just need 65 or even 55. Just something to get us over the line, right?
Yes.
Then you become an asset.
Yes, but what I'm saying,
it might evolve from tribal.
Yeah.
But it's tribal in the sense that it's from the same area.
What I'm saying, like if those mobilizers cannot garner, like maybe more than 65, maybe they can only garner 60 to 65% within an area of where there's a group of cohesive people. It's an indication that as great as they are in mobilization, they are not able to garner, like 90% of the people, which also tells you that population right there, like there's a good number of them whose thinking process when it comes to politics is not tribal.
I agree with you. And I think we agree on that
piece.
Yes,
and that's what, like I'm trying to say, whereby like mimi hata kama niko na, like as much as I was in like I'd been in ODM for a very, very long time, and people would think my entire clan, like is in ODM. There was a very significant part, like that was always on a different side. And I think that's a part where I want to say we have to be a little bit nuanced in our thinking in as far as, like where tribalism is. And to end tribalism, I think the people who have the heaviest responsibility, and in Kenya we like this all aboveism thing, where we tend to say, oh, everyone is corrupt, or everyone is a thief, or everyone is a tribalist. And me, I don't believe in that. There's a certain segment that maybe has a higher responsibility, because if this problem is killed from up there, any remnants of it that were coming from these other different groups, they will completely not exist.